The flickering glow of monitors cast an eerie pallor across Dr. Aristhorne's face, illuminating the deep lines etched by sleepless nights and a past he desperately tried to outrun. A reclusive but undeniably brilliant marine acoustician, Aris had long retreated from the academic limelight, choosing the solitude of his self-built monitoring station over the bustling corridors of prestigious institutions. His sanctuary, a cramped, perpetually humming room filled with esoteric equipment, was his penance and his obsession. He spent his nights fueled by lukewarm coffee and an unshakable sense of foreboding tethered to the abyss, listening. Deep-sea hydrophones, strategically deployed across the world's most remote oceanic trenches, were his ears into the silent, crushing depths, and he meticulously catalogued every crack, every groan, every whisper of the ocean. He wasn't just listening for whales or tectonic shifts. He was searching for anomalies, for anything that defied the known laws of marine acoustics. Then it arrived. A signal so profound, so utterly out of place, that it shattered the monotonous rhythm of his existence. It emanated not from a shallow reef or a known volcanic vent, but from the very heart of the Mariana Trench, the deepest scar on Earth's surface. It was impossibly clear, structured with a precision that hinted at artificiality, a complex repeating pattern that resonated with an almost rhythmic linguistic quality. This wasn't the chaotic symphony of nature, it was a broadcast. Aris's initial attempts to identify the source were met with a wall of impossible facts. No known vessel, no submersible, no human technology could survive the unfathomable pressures of the Challenger Deep, let alone transmit such a coherent signal. The trench was a realm of crushing darkness and unimaginable forces, a place where steel buckled like paper. Yet something was there, broadcasting. The notion was preposterous, yet the data screamed otherwise. The signal became his waking thought and his recurring nightmare. Aris, already a man of few connections, withdrew further, his already strained relationships with the few remaining colleagues and distant family fraying into non-existence. His health, always secondary to his work, began to visibly decline. Sunken eyes, a pale complexion, and a constant tremor in his hands became his new companions. He ate irregularly, slept even less, his entire being consumed by the enigma emanating from the Pacific's deepest chasm. Days blurred into weeks as he tirelessly analyzed, filtered, and reanalyzed the data. He built custom algorithms, pushed his ancient computers to their breaking points, all in pursuit of understanding the alien symphony. Then, one pre-dawn morning, amidst a cacophony of static and digital noise, a breakthrough. A small segment, meticulously cleaned and amplified, revealed something chillingly familiar. It was a human voice, distorted, fragmented, but unmistakably human. It whispered, barely audible, yet piercingly clear through the digital haze, a single word that froze the blood in Aris's veins. It was his own name. Aris. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The whispered utterance of his name, a ghostly echo from the abyssal darkness, plunged Aristhorne into a chilling reverie, pulling him back to a past he had desperately tried to bury. His mind, already a maelstrom of scientific inquiry and personal torment, fractured further, revealing the raw, unhealed wound of Project Chimera. He remembered the sterile hum of the research vessel, the nervous excitement of the crew, and the domineering presence of Dr. Lena Petrova, his former mentor. Petrova, brilliant and charismatic, possessed an ambition that bordered on recklessness, a relentless drive that often overshadowed ethical considerations and scientific caution. Aris had been a young, idealistic acoustician then, his voice tentative against her authoritative pronouncements. He had painstakingly presented calculations, models, and empirical data, all pointing to critical structural integrity flaws in the experimental deep-sea submersible, the Triton. The pressure tolerances, he argued, were dangerously miscalculated. The composite materials, unproven at such extreme depths, risked catastrophic failure. But Petrova, blinded by the allure of a groundbreaking discovery and the promise of unparalleled fame, had dismissed his warnings with a condescending wave of her hand, labeling them as youthful timidity. Her eyes, usually sharp and calculating, had held a glint of impatience, an insatiable hunger for the abyss's secrets. The disaster had unfolded with a horrifying inevitability. The Triton, carrying a crew of 6, had imploded somewhere in the Challenger Deep, its demise marked by a single, agonizingly brief burst of acoustic energy. Aris, who had remained on the surface vessel, monitoring the hydrophones, had been the first to hear the death knell. The subsequent investigation, A cynical exercise in damage control had conveniently found a scapegoat in Aris, twisting his warnings into design flaws he supposedly overlooked, portraying him as incompetent and ultimately responsible for the loss of life. Petrova, with her carefully crafted narrative and powerful connections, emerged unscathed, even celebrated for her courageous but tragic scientific endeavor. The public, eager for a villain, had readily accepted the official verdict, leaving Eris to shoulder the crushing burden of guilt and professional ruin. Now, years later, as the deep-sea broadcast continued its chilling transmission, the fragments of human-like sounds grew clearer, more defined. Beyond the static and the eerie rhythmic pulses, Aris began to distinguish agonizing cries, guttural moans of despair, and then unmistakably snippets of distress calls. These weren't random human sounds. They were the voices of the lost Project Chimera crew, their pleas for help echoing across the vast expanse of time and ocean. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. They weren't just broadcasting, they were suffering. Driven by a desperate need for answers, Aris sought out Petrova. She was now a celebrated figure, her office a testament to her continued success, adorned with accolades and framed photographs with dignitaries. Her face, though older, still bore the same unyielding ambition. When Aris confronted her with his findings, the faint recordings of the broadcast echoing from his tablet, she merely offered a tight, dismissive smile. "Aris, my dear boy," she purred, her voice dripping with feigned concern. "Are you still clinging to those delusions? The trench plays tricks on the mind." She attributed his claims to the trauma of Chimera, suggesting he was unraveling. But then a flicker of something colder, more calculating passed through her eyes. "You know, Aris," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "I've had my eye on you. I worried you might try to stir up old ghosts. Some truths are best left buried. Wouldn't you agree?" The implication was clear. She had been monitoring him, a preemptive strike against any attempt he might make to expose her past negligence. The hairs on Aris's neck prickled. Her composure, initially so convincing, now seemed brittle, a thin veneer over something far more sinister. As Petrova spoke, the broadcast from his tablet, which he had forgotten to silence, emitted a new sound. It was a voice, distinct and chillingly familiar, cutting through the garbled cries of the crew. It was Petrova's voice, speaking in a series of clipped, coded phrases, a cold, clinical tone that sent shivers down Aris's spine. The broadcast, it seemed, had just revealed its most terrifying secret yet. The chilling sound of Petrova's voice emanating from the abyssal broadcast, speaking in a cold, coded language, solidified Aris's dawning horror. It wasn't just negligence, it was an active betrayal. The realization struck him with the force of a physical blow. Petrova hadn't merely ignored his warnings. She had orchestrated his downfall, perhaps even sabotaged Project Chimera itself, all to cover her tracks and eliminate any witnesses or inconvenient truths. The disaster, the deaths, his ruined career, all pawns in her ruthless game of ambition. A cold, hard resolve settled in Aris's gut, replacing the lingering guilt with a burning need for justice. He would not be silenced. He returned to his cluttered lab, the broadcast now a constant, unnerving companion. Petrova's coded phrases, when cross-referenced with the older, fragmented recordings, began to yield disturbing connections. He meticulously sifted through every scrap of data related to Project Chimera, searching for anything, any anomaly that could explain this horrific deception. Deep within an archive server, buried under layers of classified reports and redacted documents, he found them, hidden files detailing experimental deep-sea bioluminescent organisms. These weren't just background studies, they were specific, detailed investigations into their unique properties, their adaptive capabilities under extreme pressure, and most disturbingly, their potential for manipulation. The files hinted at a bioluminescence far beyond simple light emission, suggesting a complex, almost communicative energy signature. As Aris delved deeper, the broadcast itself began to evolve. The audio, still filled with the agonizing cries of the crew, now intermittently carried visual data. Faint, flickering images began to appear on his monitors, superimposed over the spectral sound waves. They were hazy, distorted, yet unmistakably patterns of intense bioluminescence. Intricate, pulsating designs that seemed to shift and change with the rhythm of the broadcast. Interspersed with these light patterns were fleeting, ghostly glimpses of human figures, equally distorted, their forms shimmering as if viewed through turbulent water. They were not solid, but rather ethereal, merged with the very light they emitted. Aris theorized a wild, almost blasphemous idea that the immense pressure and the unique bioluminescent life forms in the trench were somehow interacting, creating a living broadcast. The organisms, perhaps, were acting as conduits, amplifying and transmitting the residual consciousness or memories of the trapped crew through their own biological light. This was beyond his expertise. He needed help, an ally who could bridge the gap between acoustics and bioengineering. His thoughts immediately turned to Dr. Anya Sharma, a brilliant, if notoriously skeptical bioengineer he had collaborated with years ago. Anya had a reputation for cutting through nonsense, but also for an insatiable curiosity that could override her initial dismissal. Aris reached out, his voice strained, his explanation bordering on the incoherent. He spoke of impossible broadcasts, of human voices from the Marianas, of Petrova's betrayal and the terrifying bioluminescent images. Anya, true to form, initially scoffed. "Aris, are you well? This sounds like a fever dream." She suggested stress, hallucination, anything but what he was claiming. Yet he persisted, sending her the raw data, the cleaned audio and the flickering visual anomalies. What finally piqued her interest wasn't the human element, which she still treated with extreme caution, but the unique energy signature Aris had isolated from the broadcast, a highly organized, non-random pattern of bioluminescent energy that defied natural explanation. It possessed a complexity, a structure, that hinted at an intelligent origin, or at least a highly sophisticated biological process. This was a puzzle Anya couldn't resist. Just as Anya agreed to take a closer look, a new horrifying image flickered across Aris's monitor, clearer than any before. Amidst the swirling bioluminescence and distorted human forms, a fleeting, undeniable image solidified. A human hand, skeletal yet distinct, still wearing a Project Chimera wristband. It was a macabre, irrefutable link to the lost crew, a silent testament to the unimaginable horror unfolding in the deepest abyss. The undeniable image of the skeletal hand, emblazoned with the Project Chimera wristband, shattered Anya's remaining skepticism. The sheer impossibility of it, coupled with the intricate energy signature Aris had presented, solidified a grim certainty within her. "All right, Aris," she conceded, her voice now devoid of its earlier dismissiveness. This changes everything. But we approach this scientifically. No wild conjecture, just data." Her commitment, though pragmatic, was a lifeline Aris desperately needed. They formed an unlikely alliance, two brilliant minds united by an impossible mystery and a shared, albeit newly forged, sense of purpose. Their combined expertise became a formidable force against the oceanic enigma. Aris focused on refining the acoustic data, employing advanced signal processing techniques, while Anya, with her bioengineering background, meticulously analyzed the bioluminescent patterns and the unique energy frequencies. Days blurred into nights, fueled by stale coffee and an urgent, almost feverish determination. Slowly, painstakingly, they began to boost and decode the broadcast. The garbled cries and coded whispers started to yield more coherent messages, fragments of human voices emerging from the static-laden depths. These weren't just distress calls, they were warnings. The Project Chimera crew, far from being simply lost, were desperately trying to communicate a terrifying truth. Their messages spoke of a new, monstrous life form, an entity of unimaginable scale and intelligence lurking in the abyssal darkness. What chilled Aris and Anya to their core was the revelation that the crew were not dead. Not truly. They were trapped, horrifyingly, slowly being assimilated by this organism, their consciousnesses intertwined with its own, their bodies dissolving into its bioluminescent matrix. The broadcast was their desperate, agonizing plea, a final echo of humanity slowly being consumed. As Aris and Anya made these chilling breakthroughs, Petrova's shadow loomed. The scientific community buzzed with whispers about Aris's renewed activity, fueled by Petrova's carefully planted rumors of his mental instability. She launched a subtle but insidious campaign to further discredit him, manipulating data, questioning his methodologies, and even attempting to hack into his monitoring systems. One night, a sudden power surge, far too localized to be accidental, nearly wiped out months of their work. Anya, quick-thinking and resourceful, managed to salvage most of the data. But the message was clear. Petrova was watching, and she was growing desperate. The near sabotage only strengthened Aris and Anya's resolve. This was no longer just about scientific discovery or personal redemption. It was about exposing a monumental deception and saving whatever remained of the Project Chimera crew. They fortified their lab, implementing redundant backups and advanced cybersecurity measures, transforming their sanctuary into a fortress against Petrova's machinations. The stakes had escalated from academic rivalry to a perilous game of cat and mouse, played out against the backdrop of an unfolding cosmic horror. Then the broadcast delivered its most visceral and horrifying image yet. After days of flickering patterns and distorted forms, a clear, unmistakable picture solidified on their main monitor. It was a crew member, one Aris recognized from old Project Chimera photos, Dr. Evelyn Reed, the lead xenobiologist. But she was no longer entirely human. Her face, though still recognizable, was partially obscured by pulsating bioluminescent growths. Her eyes, once warm and intelligent, now glowed with an eerie internal light, merging with the iridescent tendrils that snaked across her skin. It was a terrifying fusion, half human, half bioluminescent creature, a living testament to the assimilation process. The image held for only a few agonizing seconds, then dissolved back into the swirling patterns, leaving Aris and Anya profoundly shaken, their alliance forged in the crucible of this unspeakable truth. They knew with absolute certainty that they had to go to the trench. The horrifying image of Dr. Evelyn Reed, her humanity twisted into a bioluminescent nightmare, solidified Aris and Anya's conviction. There was no turning back, no question of further analysis from afar. The trench called to them, a siren song of terror and urgency. They had to go to the source. The decision to embark on a risky, unauthorized deep-sea expedition to the Mariana Trench was made with a grim determination, a silent acknowledgement of the immense danger, but also of the profound moral imperative. They knew Petrova would be watching, but the lives, or what remained of them, of the Project Chimera crew depended on their immediate action. Anya, with her vast network and inventive spirit, quickly mobilized resources. She secured a small privately owned research submersible, ostensibly for a deep-sea geological survey, using her scientific standing and a hefty, untraceable grant fund. More critically, she adapted and enhanced her experimental drone technology, transforming it into a resilient, highly maneuverable probe capable of withstanding the crushing pressures of the trench while transmitting high-definition video and data in real time. This drone, christened Nautilus, would be their eyes and ears in the abyss, their vanguard into the unknown. The journey to the Mariana Trench was fraught with tension. Every ping from the sonar, every flicker on the console sent a ripple of anxiety through the small crew. Aris, his face etched with fatigue and a haunting resolve, meticulously calibrated their acoustic equipment, preparing for the moment they would descend into the darkest depths. Anya, ever the pragmatist, ran countless diagnostics on Nautilus, ensuring its every system was flawless. The air in the submersible was thick with unspoken fears, the weight of their mission pressing down on them long before the ocean's physical pressure began. As they approached the target coordinates, the ocean transformed. The inky blackness was punctuated by an ethereal, pulsating glow emanating from below. It was the organism, vast and ancient, a living nebula of bioluminescence. Anya deployed Nautilus, a tiny beacon of human ingenuity against the cosmic grandeur of the deep. The drone descended, its powerful lights cutting through the murky water, revealing a spectacle both terrifying and mesmerizing. Nautilus transmitted images of an entity of impossible scale, a colossal network of interconnected bioluminescent tendrils, pulsing with an internal light that shifted in color and intensity. It was not a single creature in the conventional sense, but a vast intelligent entity, a collective consciousness manifested through a complex symbiotic bioluminescent organism. It communicated not through sound, but through intricate patterns of light, a silent cosmic language of the deep. As Nautilus drew closer, the patterns intensified, and Aris's acoustic sensors, now augmented by Anya's biofrequency interpreters, began to translate the light into comprehensible data. What they discovered sent a chill down their spines. The organism was indeed broadcasting, but not merely the distress calls of the lost crew. It was broadcasting their memories, their thoughts, their very consciousness, assimilated and held within its vast neural network of light. The crew were not just trapped. They were part of it, their minds contributing to its collective intelligence, their final moments playing out in an endless agonizing loop of light and memory. And then, a new horrifying layer of truth unfolded. Within the assimilated memories of the Project Chimera crew, Aris discovered fragments of Petrova's final communications with them before the disaster. It was a cold, calculated exchange, revealing her ultimate betrayal. She knew about the organism. She had observed its unique properties, its ability to assimilate and integrate organic matter. Her Project Chimera was not just about studying deep-sea life. It was a brazen attempt to weaponize this entity, to harness its power for her own twisted ambitions, sacrificing her crew as expendable test subjects. The broadcast through the crew's agonizing consciousness was not just a plea for rescue. It was a plea for help, for understanding, a desperate cry from an entity that sought not destruction but connection. Suddenly, the submersible's comms crackled. Petrova's voice, distorted by static but unmistakable, ripped through the cabin. "Aris, Anya, you've gone too far. This cannot be allowed to stand." A massive distant explosion rocked the submersible. Petrova, in a final, desperate act to bury her secrets and destroy the organism, had launched a targeted sonic weapon. The abyss, already a place of unimaginable danger, was about to become a battleground. The submersible shuddered violently, alarms blaring as the sonic weapon's reverberations tore through the water. Petrova's voice, a venomous hiss over the comms, echoed the destructive intent. Aris, his face a mask of grim determination, knew this was the moment of truth. He and Anya had to act, not just to save themselves, but to protect the organism and expose Petrova's monstrous deception to the world. Anya, despite the chaos, moved with practiced efficiency. "She's targeting the deepest trench, trying to collapse the geological strata around the organism," she shouted over the cacophony. "We need to flood the global data networks with everything we have, now, before she can complete her wipe." Aris, gripping the controls, steered the submersible through the turbulent water, dodging falling debris from the compromised trench walls. His fingers flew across his console, furiously uploading the raw, unedited broadcast data, the assimilated memories, the pleas for help, the chilling evidence of Petrova's weaponization plan. Simultaneously, Anya initiated a series of cascading data packets, each containing Petrova's incriminating communications, her cold, calculated orders to the Project Chimera crew, her dismissive reports of their warnings, and ultimately her intention to sacrifice them. These weren't just files. They were screams encoded in data, testimonials of betrayal ready to detonate across the digital sphere. The process was agonizingly slow, each byte fighting against Petrova's sophisticated countermeasures. The submersible took another hit, lights flickering, but Aris held steady. He envisioned the organism, a vast sentient tapestry of light, its silent cries for understanding finally reaching beyond the crushing pressure of the abyss. This wasn't just about justice for the Project Chimera crew. It was about the very definition of life and humanity's responsibility to it. Then a triumphant ping echoed through the cabin. "It's through," Anya exclaimed, her voice hoarse with relief and exhaustion. All of it. The broadcast, her communications, the drone footage. It's out, dispersed across every major scientific network, every news outlet, every social platform. She can't stop it now. Above them, on the surface, the world was about to awaken to a truth more profound and terrifying than any science fiction. Petrova's carefully constructed empire of lies crumbled almost instantly. The evidence was irrefutable, undeniable. The global scientific community, once her most ardent admirers, turned on her with a righteous fury. Investigations were launched, her assets frozen, and her name, once synonymous with groundbreaking research, became a byword for scientific hubris and criminal negligence. Lena Petrova, the celebrated scientist, faced swift and brutal justice for her actions, her ambition having finally consumed her. For Aris, a profound sense of peace settled over him, washing away years of guilt and self-blame. The weight of Project Chimera, the public condemnation, the whispers of his failure, all of it lifted. He had not only exposed the truth, but had given a voice to the voiceless, both human and alien. His redemption was not in escaping the past, but in confronting it, embracing the terrifying unknown, and choosing compassion over despair. He had found peace not in solitude, but in connection, in the shared purpose with Anya, and in the silent, luminous presence of the organism. The world grappled with the implications of the discovery of a sentient deep-sea entity, one that communicated through light and assimilated consciousness. It sparked unprecedented debates on ethics, intelligence, and the true meaning of life. Governments scrambled, scientific institutions re-evaluated, and humanity was forced to confront its anthropocentric biases. Aris and Anya, having faced the abyss and returned, dedicated their lives to understanding and protecting the organism. They became its primary advocates, bridging the gap between human science and alien intelligence. Their work ushered in a new era of marine biology, one focused on symbiosis and understanding rather than exploitation. The broadcast, once a chilling mystery that haunted Aris's nights, transformed into a symbol of hope, a luminous bridge to a new profound understanding of life on Earth and perhaps beyond. The deep, once a terrifying void, now held the promise of an unimaginable future, guided by the silent shimmering wisdom of the abyssal light.